Welcome back to the Good Wife podcast. If you are new here, you stumbled across this channel. We have conversations on marriage, relationships, family, faith, life, and everything in between. So if that's your vibe, please consider subscribing, like this episode, leave us a comment, and I love hearing from you. So do leave us a comment in our comment section. My name is Rachel. I am typically the host of this show. Once in a while, I do it with my husband. But for today, I'm just by myself with a fantastic panel of men, of upstanding, what do they call it? So this was the thinking for this conversation. You know how in marriage, we are usually pushing and pulling, men and women, because we are different. I was like, let me just get some men to just tell us why they behave the way they behave. Women. So pull out your notebooks and start writing. And I know many of you are going to be like, oh my gosh, my husband is like that. Oh my gosh, I thought I was alone. Oh my gosh, he did what? So this conversation is really about trying to understand the mind of a man. I know we can never exhaust it, but let's at least scratch the surface, right? It might help a marriage or two. A wife or two, actually. That is the goal, because when we don't understand our husbands, we struggle, you know? So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you for being here. So to my right is, I'm not going to say much about what you do because I don't feel like that's important. Unless you're looking for business.
No.
Is any of you looking for business? No?
We're here to help
Yeah.
wives understand our
So this is Andrew Munanura. Andrew is a very good friend of mine. We go way-ish back.
Don't say the years.
I won't say the years. Yes, I won't say the years. He's a lawyer by profession, so call him counsel. And if you need representation, is that a thing? They can reach you. Okay. And then
have a big pocket.
That's true.
Yeah.
Next to him is Reverend Captain Gideon Muhima. Up until this morning, I thought he went to flying school, and that's why he's called Captain.
Oh, nice.
Shock on me, he did not go to flying school. Neither is he in the army.
No.
So
Of some sort.
Of some sort, yes. You are in the Lord's army. Okay, that will do. So that's Gideon over there. Gideon is also a very good friend of mine. We go way back. Then of course, Mwami Chitaka, who is not new to you. You've seen him on many other platforms, including his own. He and his wife have a podcast called The Chitakas. And they've also written a book, so they're both authors. And all of these gentlemen here, number one, are Christian, and number two, are passionate and pro-marriage. Right? Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Yeah. And so that was my thinking. I said, I want to find good, godly Christian men. Let me bring them here so that they can tell us a bit about, why men. Because I find also that while men are Christian, they still have men tendencies. And so I think off the bat, first of all, say hi quickly.
Greetings.
Hi.
Oh, well. Great.
Hi. Okay. So I know this conversation is really broad, but I wanted us as, initial thoughts. Why do you think men and women, or what is that big difference between men and women that cause us to struggle, to constantly pull ropes?
Going like that.
Wait, author. We start with the author.
From my study, I realized that a lot of time I approach marriage as a Christian. And I realized in trying to understand marriage as a Christian, I ended up in what they call a man with a hammer syndrome. Where they say to a man with a hammer, everything is a nail. So the Bible, there's a dimension of the difference between men and women it may not highlight. But the more you start to understand our differences, also in the way our minds are
wired, yes.
Right? And you find men have a leaning to logic, and women may lean more to a feeling, right? These are actual
biological,
right? And many times I found myself having fights in marriage, but you realize what you're arguing for is not what she's arguing for.
Yes.
Right? She's arguing about how it made her feel. And you're arguing about
the facts.
Right? So I think is that those differences, but you start to realize in God's perfect design, you can't pair two like minds. It's no benefit.
Yeah.
Right? It's putting two opposites that can check each other and find the right balance.
Oh, makes sense. Makes sense.
Interesting way of looking
Yeah.
at it. I think I borrow from that. Mark Gango, A Tale of Two Brains, is one of my favorite persons I refer to when it comes to
Marriage.
Okay, I think the biggest difference is the way our brains are wired, and that then affects everything else. I will say also that the Bible does critically highlight the difference in terms of how God created both men and women, in view of the roles he gave them.
Yes.
Because he knew exactly how they were wired. So I think that because of how uniquely different they are wired and the different roles they ought to be playing as far as he's concerned, when sin comes into the picture, then we do have the tensions. What used to be complementary is now competitive. It's now a lot more. It's I can do things better than you. I am blaming you for my failure. It's a blame game. I am blaming you. I'm blaming the environment. I am not the one responsible for what is going wrong.
It is you. Yeah.
The reason why there is tension between the two is what the Bible describes as the sin play in relationships.
That's quite interesting. What should have been complementary has now become competitive.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Counsel.
Well, initially when I got to know the topic, I laughed because the general philosophy is that women believe men don't think. They're the ones who think.
Yeah.
So we don't.
You have no opinion.
Now it's interesting that they want to know
What
Go
to
away.
think. No, how to think of nothing.
But I think the greatest struggle, and just speak from the gentleman, is when wives want men to think the way they do, or the reverse. You'll always have a clash. And as Gideon said, complement, don't compete, but we are more in the competing stage. And I think because there is the appetite, the desire, that the only way my husband understands or gets my point is to think it in light of the way I'm thinking it. And it's inconceivable that I can gladly think about it and appreciate and be empathetic, but still think about it from
Your perspective.
my perspective.
Yeah.
And so because there is all these facets, and Felix is the one who said that logic versus feeling. So a man, when a situation comes out, is trying to see, and also it's a bit about upbringing. Women are allowed to get in touch. When your daughter falls down, everyone is running to them. Boy, get on with it. This tough skin. So by the time we enter marriage, we're in that space of, you know what? This is a problem. How do I solve it? Driving from worker's house one day, and my wife is pouring out her frustrations about her work, etc., etc. And 2 seconds into the conversation, I had 150 solutions. And then she told me, no. Can you please stop thinking and just listen? Okay. When I want your views, I'll ask for them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the heads up. And then I started becoming very quiet. Then she would say, but
You're
why
not
are you
saying
anything? I'm still waiting for the window of opportunity. So I think the desire that we think alike is never going to happen.
Yeah.
And the faster we jump out of it, the better for all of us. To know that I'll not think like my wife will not think like me. She'll have a different opinion about stuff. And it's actually good that we have different opinions. I mean, we're different. Just look at our physical structure.
Yeah,
we are different. Why would we want to think alike? And as they say, thinking alike does not necessarily mean that you are united.
That's true.
One of us could be tortured into thinking like the other.
So I'm curious to hear where we lost it, and I know that there may not be one point in particular. Where did we lose it to the point where now we've become competitive, and maybe also speak through expectations, the difference in expectations for men and women. I watched a TikTok video yesterday where an influencer was saying, you know, if you didn't receive anything from, if you're a woman and you didn't receive anything from your boyfriend or husband over Valentine's Day, then there's something wrong with that relationship, you know, kick him out and blah, blah, blah. And there were quite interesting comments underneath. And I remember watching it and I was like, so who is talking on behalf of the men? Did they receive anything, you know? So it's that women, we have a default setting that we are always on the receiving end, while men are the givers, you know? So where did those disparities come from? And maybe you might speak to the sin nature. Where did the disparity come from? Where did the competitiveness come from? That now we don't think of men as worthy of receiving love. We think of them as givers of love and affection. Does that come from your provision, role? Where does it come from? I don't know if my question is clear.
It is
Abundantly clear?
abundantly clear. The answer is what might
Is
be
what
with
might
us.
be there.
I can just share something. May not be direct, but along those lines. One time I was walking. I take walks in the neighborhood. And I saw a young lady. She was from fetching water. She was trying to hit a mango. And I was like, it was a common trait, sight of women desiring those raw mangoes growing up. And I had a light bulb moment. And I realized early on, way back in our ancestral days, our ancestors, the women were gatherers. The men were hunters. And I found it fascinating that that woman was hitting mangoes because she has it in her psyche to gather. You see? Now, as a Christian, I've always found it interesting as I expose myself to theories about evolution. And the theory of evolution makes sense because it shows you that we inherit things from the past.
From the past.
Right? But the problem, scientists go way further. They even say that there was no God. It's just a natural thing happening. So I use the theory just to at a certain level, and then I stop. But to bring closer to what someone shared, is that even us, when you see how we raise children, we raise them still in the same patterns. Right? You raise the man to continue to be a certain way. You find someone has a girl and a boy, and they don't raise them the same. The boy, you continue this path. So we keep enforcing
the narrative.
Right? And when you think about the conflict element, the problem is not that we are different. Because in life, beyond even gender, we have differences. Right? But the problem is our character falls short. I realized something, that if I have a misunderstanding with my wife that cannot be resolved, usually I just have to examine the fruit of the spirit, and you can see where the problem is. Maybe you've fallen short in patience. Maybe you've fallen short in self-control. It's a simple idea I got to realize that for a team to work between two people, it doesn't need both. You have all the power within you to maintain the balance.
That's true.
If someone maybe has a problem, you be humble. The Waganda have a saying, right? And sort of like these logs of wood that are similar cannot use to set a fire. They have to be different versions, right? So it was the key insight there is the difference that creates that makes it work. So if someone goes up and you also go up, you're going to lose it. Bump heads. If someone goes up, just humble yourself. Eventually, the equilibrium,
stability.
It will stabilize.
Your trouble is the humbling of oneself.
That's it. Yes.
And for me, that's the root cause, and I will lean into that from a theological perspective. I think that humanity suffers an existential crisis because the why question, the why I exist, is never answered or hardly ever answered. We, for a long time after the fall, are just constantly existing to survive. and then to thrive. And then, words like those. That has been the trend in humanity. You have to put a mark in the world for some reason.
Yeah.
And I think in that pursuit, we have lost our identity, and we are trying to look for it
Elsewhere.
Elsewhere. And so one of the things that for me, I would point to, again, back to, as a Christian, the idea that relationships were broken in Genesis 3, 5 or thereabout. The first was the relationship between man and God. When God comes into, and they had just eaten the fruit, they hid from him. And so that they were ashamed of themselves. And that's the second relationship that was broken. The relationship with self.
Yes.
They are ashamed of who they are before God, because remember, they are made in his image.
Yeah.
That when we break our relationship with God, the image is lost. And so we then have crisis within ourselves as an identity crisis. And then when God inquires where they are at and what happened, Adam quickly blames
his
Eve.
wife. Yeah.
But the thing is that many people think that it was Eve he blamed. It was more of God. The woman
you gave me.
And again, that just reflects how that relationship breaks down. And now it has broken the relationship between you and the wife. And now your wife has no one else to blame but the surroundings.
Yeah.
And that has been the trend. We blame each other and blame demons and blame all these things. We don't take responsibility. And so because we don't take responsibility, the reason we don't take responsibility is because we have failed to see the image, what we are supposed to be versus who we are now. There's
a disconnect.
There's a disconnect. And so we are looking for that thing.
Yeah.
And so because we're looking for that thing, we are always in tensions, we're always clashing because someone is trying to define me, yet I think I know who I am. The pride comes into the place, which then makes humility
very difficult.
I dare say, impossible thing to do. For one to humble themselves. In fact, to truly humble oneself is very impossible. Even for those that think they are humble, they're usually doing that for selfish reasons.
This is true. This is true.
It's being strategic. Kind of what you described. Like, in order for this not to escalate and for my peace to be maintained, I'm going to go low. But it's not for humanity's sake alone. There is always an intention. And again, that is because of a lostness that we have in view of our Creator who made us in His image.
That's powerful.
And,
wow.
Really, really good.
Wow. I think Philippians 2 is a beautiful text when it comes to relationship. Forsake your rights and privileges. Then in verse 5 it says, in your relationship with one another, have the same mentality. So I think we should go away from the idea that we must be the same. I think that's where we first fall. We must also see what society has done and the role it has played in this. For the longest of time, who has been empowered? Them. Who has been stepped on? The man child. So by the time we even get into marriage, they do bridal showers for them. Men,
you figure it out.
So we get into marriage at different
levels.
And therefore the need for us to understand that what is at play here between I and my wife is massively bigger than our two small minds. Proverbs is an interesting text because Solomon refers to certain creatures that have been created by God. And he refers to the ant and he says, you sluggard, look at the ant and be wise. It has no commander, it has no king, it has no captain. Sorry. But no one tells it to gather. It knows what to do. It will gather in the summer. It will do what it needs to do because it knows winter is coming. Now we come from dating, it's lovey-dovey, then the reality of the marriage, and your podcast does it very well, the reality of the marriage relationship just slaps you in the face like a hurricane. And so you don't know when back to is it the moment? Is it a good time? Do I bring this up? Do I really need to bring this up?
Yeah.
Is it important for me to bring this up? And so the tension will constantly remain as we constantly remain in the blame game. It will always remain and be resident in our homes because we seek. Someone deceived us. The similar is the motor vehicle is made up of a lot of parts. A lot of parts. I liked the Luganda saying, what is the purpose of this marriage? And just focus on what the heartbeat of the marriage is. And if we focus on that, and we bring in whatever percentages we have, and I liked what you said, sometimes I'm at -0, I'm like the weather in the USA. And my wife better be at 100%.
Otherwise.
This idea of conflict comes from the concept that marriage is 50-50. Whoever deceived us that it's 50-50, I don't know when he will repent, because I want to be in the service, he does repent. So can we just back up and understand that I come in all in, she comes in all in. There are times she will not be all in, there are times she will be all in, and the reverse is true. But my mind must be stayed on Christ. My mind must be that attitude of Christ. I must lay down my rights and privileges for the sake of this relationship.
For sure.
And when they will, as they commonly do, come up, then, or has come up, I must trust God to point those things out to her. And the best I can do in that moment is lower. Because when you both, you can never put out a fire by adding
fire.
No, you can never.
No, you can't. You can't.
I just wanted to.
Yes, go ahead.
Something interesting stood out. Is there's something I learned about marriage. Sometimes I would have fights when I just gotten married. I'll take walks trying to break it down. What was the failure? What did I do wrong? And so on. And one of the things I realized that the equation for peace in marriage is interesting because it requires you to adjust yourself a bit, but also to be gracious. Okay. So it is, you're dealing with an imperfect person. How do you find harmony with an imperfect person? It means be flexible. You're extending grace on their weakness, but also improving your weaknesses.
As well. Yes.
So you start to realize, I shared on our last show we did, something I learned from a gentleman called Jeff Bezos of Amazon. He said something that I found very fascinating about that a body is always fighting its environment. For instance, if your environment is cold, your body is hot. It produces heat. It refuses to surrender to the environment. The moment you surrender and it becomes an equilibrium, that is death. Now, that place of the body fighting to not be one with the environment. And I think it's contrary to what most people think about marriage. They say, I want you to be happy. Yes. It is a strange mission for marriage to go to marriage to be happy. Right? I think marriage is actually like work. Like you don't have kids to be happy. They drain your wallet and joy in that.
And your emotions and everything.
It is actually responsibility. But I think I like when you brought out that the failure is because you don't know the standard of who you're supposed to be. So you miss the responsibility that you're supposed to be about. And I think that is the disconnect. We enter marriage for ourselves. Yes. And suddenly you find work there. And then you're like, nah, look at
not for me.
This is not what I signed up for. That's what it was about.
I deserve better. No, that really does make a lot of sense. And I forgot to ask, how long have you been married? You said
16.
16 years?
5.
5?
Oh, I was about to get out of the
We started on a high note. So close to 5 years as well.
No.
4 years.
So I was making 4 years.
You're making 4 years this year. I know that there are people who watch this podcast and they are in the trenches now. And by trenches, you know what I mean. Like those early years of your marriage, the man is leaving his socks next to the laundry basket. The laundry basket is here, but he has put his socks here. He's leaving the bathroom wet, and everything that's just kind of triggering you.
Yeah.
I want you to speak to that person, because you guys sound, and I love how you sound. You're speaking to me because I'm kind of at the same stage that you are. Like, there are things that I have learned over time in marriage. I don't sweat the small things, but there's someone who is in the trenches now, and they're like, guys, me, this is not what I signed up for, And so I want you to speak to that person, that wife that is noticing these things. Like, why do men do things like this? I think for me in the beginning, I used to feel like my husband was being spiteful. I just felt like he was out to get me. Why are you feeling sorry for him?
Ben will cry with you.
I thought you were going to say about be Rachel.
No, you judged him without even hearing.
I know, right? Because I'm like, I have put the basket here. Why are your socks here? Why aren't you mopping the bathroom? And it's like the tiny, tiny little things. But there's a possibility that a wife is judging her husband based on the way men behave, because you guys don't really care about the things that we care about.
That's another lie.
Is it? So demystify it.
So the interesting thing, Rachel, is there are men who talk of order. Even that class. Now, the reverse is the wife who is in that position.
Yeah.
I think it's just a wrong perspective.
Yeah.
But also I think oftentimes you'll struggle with your spouse because you are judging their weaknesses based on your strengths.
That's true.
And oftentimes you are in a place where you always are in the stronger spaces. Now you push aside his strengths. He might not be putting the socks in the basket, but when the crisis came up, forgive, I was about to use the N word, the dude showed up. Because I know this show might be in another country.
Yes.
He showed up. And he handled the crisis. But you forget that because of socks. So this is my philosophy that I told my wife. If you see it, if God so grants you the opportunity to see it, and I have not seen it, it is not time to remind me that it was I to do it. That's why we are one. So if there is a failure in one aspect, you can't say, it's like telling the leg, if you have pain in the leg, the head doesn't say, that's your problem.
That's your problem,
I have no problem. It's the leg that has the problem. So deal with your pain.
Yeah.
So I find it quite interesting that the greater problem there, Rachel, is not that the socks are not being put in the basket. It's because it's your strength and it's his weakness.
Yeah.
It's still back to strength and weakness.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing is that if you go back to upbringing, as Felix said, women are taught those things.
Yeah, when we're little.
No one gets down with Gideon and says, you lay your bed. Most of us learn it when we get into the military, when we start staying alone. That's when we start doing
conditioned.
We're conditioned to.
Yeah.
And it's not to suggest that a man should,
just be messy.
Or a woman should just be. But I know women who recently, a friend of mine got into a crisis and he was indisposed for an extended period of time. And he wasn't at home. And meeting the wife was like, I now appreciate what this man has been doing. You understand? Because she never cared about a water bill. She never cared about anything. Now the guy is not around and she has got to run the ship.
Yeah.
Then she was like, I now appreciate this man.
Yeah.
Instead of sweating the socks, the guy has been paying the bill.
Has been paying the bill.
Guy shopping, she didn't even know where certain things are bought because the guy was doing a lot more.
Yeah.
But you know what is going to cause trouble? The socks. Or he didn't lay the bed. And was the last one in the bed.
But why don't you lay the bed? I'm asking for the masses. No, carry on.
So I think it's, for me, it's very, very interesting. Because even when your husband lays the bed on one of those important days, you don't even take cognizance of it. You don't even say, oh honey, you laid the bed. But you remember all the 190 times he hasn't done it. So I think the idea is that, can we just back up a bit and understand that you're more critical of your spouse in their weaknesses, which are always your strengths. That's why the two become one.
Yeah, to complement.
The things my wife deals with or that I can't deal with, are many. And I thank God for it. So I guess as they grow older, unless you're taking the deliberate approach that Felix is doing, where you sit down and analyze. But some of us, as you grew older, you started realizing, oh, by the way, if I focused on this woman's strength, I would have a more peaceful home. I will not sweat what she's not doing right. Let me just focus on her strength. And realize that her weaknesses are my strong point. Let me cover her. Let me cover her up in that space. Let me provide the leaves in that space.
I think building on that, the idea that not sweating the small stuff is what usually brings people to the end of themselves. The issue is that when there are things that I am unable to comprehend, throwing the socks on the floor rather than the basket, or not laying the bed as well as you want me to, or ever.
Because quality is also important.
I think that. So now, when we judge them on the basis of abomination or sin or iniquity, you have missed several steps to get to that point. You made a conclusion. For instance, he's spiting you. When it's the last thing on his mind.
I know.
To do. And and of course there will be some ladies who will be like, no, you should know better. You should know all these things. This is
Who nurtured him?
Your mother.
You chose him though. So you have the issue as well. So there are things that he called them weaknesses, and there are things that we ought to be patient with one another in becoming. Because I'm very certain, fairly certain, there are things about you who lays the bed like a military person. There are things,
hospital corners.
Hospital corners and whatnot. There are things about you that
they have names.
Hospital corners.
I learned those ones also. There are things about you who does those things perfectly that he finds appalling. But you would want grace from him. And in fact, if he shows the same disdain you show him,
I'll demand grace.
You would demand grace or leave. So most women are like, that man is emotionally abusive when he's doing the same thing you've been doing for So I think that the giving of each other grace is not a thing of male or female. It's a thing of being a Christian. That there are certain things he has spent over 25 years in the habit of that are not going to leave the day you get married.
That's
and
true.
You thinking that you are going to be the person that changes them is delulu of the highest order. There are things that are going to take as long a time
as it was
before.
Getting them.
25, if you got married at 25, it's going to take 25 years. Or sometimes even longer for some of those things to get done. And the thing here is that you went in for the long haul. The vows you made. I stand there and I listen to these people making these vows.
I know.
Are you
Are you
sure?
sure?
For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer.
The busy thing is that you usually tell us the vows you're about to make.
Are to be made in the name of God and who the judges. So if you are not sure, please don't. And they're like, in that moment, they're like, okay. So what I do after the post-marital counseling is like, just keep going back to the vows. So where do we stop at worse?
There's no end.
What's the what's the end of worse here? And they get to realize that, by the way, this is a serious thing. And so when you get people saying marriage is a trap, they really haven't appreciated
the seriousness
of what you are getting into. Regardless of the counseling, some of them don't have the counseling. Most of them are conditioned. Others have romanticized the idea of marriage because of social media and the movies. That we go in with expectations of Prince Charming and Princess Cinderella, and then we realize
we get disappointed.
We get disappointed. So I think that we do ourselves better service when we extend grace to one another, especially on the small stuff that are not necessarily sinful, because sin means intent.
There's intent,
There is
yes.
intent. But
Yeah.
these are just weaknesses, mistakes that someone makes. They're not necessarily sinful. So let's not treat them as though they are abomination.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to add to that, I think part of it is the way we frame marriage, right? Some people go to marriage to be happy. Some women were waiting for God, just bring the ones. Right, time is
Time is running out, yes.
So some of those, they've arrived. It's an arrival,
Yeah.
right? And depending on how you think about marriage, is going to determine your approach around it.
And this has nothing to do with whether you're a male or female mind.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I think about life, we're in a constant journey of development,
Yeah.
right? And marriage is a unique environment to develop us.
That's true.
And I'll use an example of how teaching happens in school. The teacher comes on the blackboard and gives you the theories. That's one stage of education, giving the theories. Then afterwards, he gives you the examples. Some numbers, this is how you calculate. Then afterwards, he gives you an exercise. You try it. So people come into marriage, they've been developed to a certain level. Now they've been graduated to a different place of development. Now, everything that has cultivated them is from their background.
Yeah.
When you see where I come from, one time I went with my wife to see my parents, and there were plastic cups for drinking. And my mom said, Shitakatatako is some plastic. Well, my mom was conscious of that, right? So it was good for my wife to hear, like, oh, wait, he's not just being pilinkity
at home, yes.
He's actually being grown up like this.
Yeah.
So we all have our raw product we enter marriage with.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening, that raw product is on display. That raw product may inconvenience you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you have the mindset, we are actually on the journey of development, you result with different. And I like the idea that you're looking at their weaknesses that may be your strengths.
That's true.
I met a gentleman a while back when I used to go to a health club. And he told me he likes his things proper. And his bed, he told the wife to stop laying it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, because he wants to get the edges right. Right?
A man?
Yes.
Wow.
So it is one of the things that confuses us about life is the way, when you look at men, for instance, in statistics, there's something called a normal distribution. It's sort of like a bell curve, where there are many people in the middle, but a few who are outliers. Right? So you find most men are the same in the middle.
Yeah.
But there are those few who are the exception.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that's what causes the confusion. How come this guy doesn't do that? Maybe it's the exception.
Yeah.
Right? But there's the general element. But I think that the key is to understand the person you are in this equation with. Understand. And one of the things I found interesting, when you mentioned about learn, maybe they are weak. The challenge of it is this. How do you know it is their weakness or is something they have not had to exercise?
Yeah.
You get? Because when you're alone and you leave your socks there,
you're going to
what's a
find them
big
there.
deal?
Yes, there's no big deal.
It doesn't inconvenience anyone.
Yeah.
No one is going to
No
die.
one's going to die.
The moon is going to, the sun will rise.
Yeah.
But when you have someone else in your life, they're like, why you leave the sock there? So now you're changing your pattern, and it turns out what they're saying is actually the best thing.
Yeah.
You shouldn't leave your socks in that living room.
Yeah.
That's not proper.
Yeah.
But if they come from a point of judgment, they failed in their role.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
But if they actually understanding, notice how he's been cultivated with his life. So now you help him, but realize also where this is now set. Right? This is set. Because when you push it further, you now break it.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's that balance. What can be adjusted and what is set.
And what is set. I like
The
that.
interesting thing is development.
Yeah.
The interesting word there is development. Marriage, God, your mind.
On
On this one,
yes.
ticks all of it. Because you see, the standard at which I will judge my wife is 25 years old. She's just a toddler in this specific space. But even I, who is in the weakness area, to be self-conscious that actually I can improve myself in this area. This thing of this is the way I am, love me. Blaza.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let us have some improvement, self-improvement. And the interesting thing with self-improvement, back to the selfishness. Selfishness is another thing in marriage. Is when the person who benefits most from a better you is you,
Yes.
not your spouse.
Yeah.
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 If I'm less angry, I enjoy myself.
There's no
The
stress.
people around me are just getting the byproduct.
Yeah.
But the person really, really... I was having a conversation with my 10-year-old nephew. I'm driving him home and I say, what are you learning? He said he's learning two things. He's how old?
10.
10. He said that the things he's learning in these days is 1, self-control, 2, self-awareness. I almost
10.
know. I was like, you are
You are
10 and you are deliberate about these areas of your life.
Yeah.
And I said, why self-control? He said, self-control because I realized that when I get angry, I speak faster and I say things that I don't like saying. 10.
Wow.
He's also self-aware. He said he wants to be self-aware of his environment, which environment cause him to be apprehensive, which environment cause him to be relaxed. He's 10. And probably this is what marriage really calls us into, to just self-control and also have that self-awareness of who we really truly are. And if each one of us looked ourselves into the mirror,
Honestly.
you realize that the problem isn't the spouse you married. The problem is you.
Yeah.
And if you improve yourself, if you... I need to have a moment with you. Just this idea of walking and analyzing why it's true. I never... 16 years.
Yeah.
It is over. Another thing about the mind of a man. We are so incompatible.
Linear, yeah.
We'll quarrel in the sitting room, in the bedroom, we'll expect
Yeah.
from us. And it's not like we've forgotten
That-
about the quarrel.
No,
it is just
it's just
that you
like-
passed by him.
Okay.
So don't blame him. And he has realized what a good thing
He has,
before
even
him.
though you fought.
Yeah,
Okay.
even though you fought. So it is not that they're insensitive about the fight. It is not that they don't care about your feelings. It is just that life needs to be celebrated even in the low
The
moments.
low moments. Yeah.
In the low moments.
Yeah. I have a question because I'm aware of the aspect of time. The other misconception, and I think something that women need to understand about men is, your vulnerability, how you process times that are uncertain. Let's say as the head of the home, you're struggling financially, there are needs, and we don't see you crumble right before us. Not that we want you to crumble, but I think there's a level of vulnerability that many wives are looking for from their husbands that they are not getting. Maybe talk us through what that's about. Are you protecting us? What's the thinking behind, no, I need to maintain a stable persona approach to the challenges that I'm facing within my family, even though your wife would like you to be a little more vulnerable. Like, tell me what is going on with you. Like, are you hurting? You guys hurt? Do you have feelings? There's that thing of maybe men don't feel,
Well, I think it depends on how you view it. Actually, I think the answer to the question is in a question. Are you willing to listen? You expect me to be macho, and then you want me to share my
feelings.
But another thing is the way men talk about how they are and where they are is absolutely different. And I have found that if you get to know if you become aware of your husband's comfort place. Ben likes fast cars. You might hate them. But getting to learn about cars and learn why he gets the thrill from cars, back to development, you'd be amazed that a trip with him to go and drive this fast car, he will tell you where he is more than over a cup of tea at home.
Okay.
If your husband is in farming, go to the farm with him. You'll be amazed at how much this man will talk. You go watch a football game with him, you'd be intrigued at how much he will talk. Not to say that men shouldn't learn how to talk over a couple. All I'm saying is that the way the man's mind works is that it is not a question-answer approach.
It's not an
But
interview.
also it is more about that if he likes vegetation, walking, get off the high heels, put on your, and
Your
just take the
sneakers and
walk
walk.
with him.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed along the way, he'll tell you, it's tough.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, Felix, the reason why I take a walk is because I'm trying,
to process.
see how to keep the boat balanced.
Yeah.
And just listen. But what is happening in our society now is that when the man pours out, then they get emotional abuse. They are really hit hard,
Weaponized.
and then we close out. We are judged. We close out. We are being told about this man who's putting it together. This man who is okay. This man, his marriage is crumbling, but he's.
And notice that that's not just the wife. It is the women in his life that have given the impression he cannot be vulnerable.
Gotcha.
All right. So you have some mothers who have created an environment where the man needs to
Man.
and
Don't
then, of
cry,
course,
men
then
don't
you have
cry.
the men don't cry. Then you have the men who he's looking at that have also had the same pattern, and so by the time he becomes your husband, there is already in his mind a view that the only safe spaces he can get to think are the ones he has created for himself. And you coming into those safe spaces are an intruder because you represent everything that has. And sometimes you won't even know how to handle his emotions. And so these exercises, the doing the things he's interested in, look out for his emotions in those moments. Don't like when you're happy, when he's happy, pay attention. What exactly has excited him? What is behind the excitement?
The excitement.
What is behind, for instance, the excitement of winning
a game? Yeah.
What does that make him feel like? Victorious in some sort of way? He has it's an escape from reality. Where he feels like he's he has. So when men are using these experiences to escape the weight they feel on their shoulders, and then the day they open up to a woman who makes them look like, by the way, you've never brought a child out of your vagina, so you don't know.
You don't know what you're saying.
You don't know what you're saying. That kind of thing. That patronizing jazz of you guys, you ladies, and we appreciate the fact that you carry heavy burdens, but it doesn't take away the fact that we also feel like the burdens we carry are heavy, regardless of how you feel about them. All right. And that, but because I can't say anything, and I need to recognize your suffering, I need to recognize that I'm going to have to look for an escape somewhere. You're not safe for me to be vulnerable with. Because the moment I am, you crush me. And there is nothing a man hates
than being crushed.
Because he feels he is pointless. Like he has no strength. The thing that makes a man
is to keep it together.
That he can exhibit, whether it's emotional, mental, intellectual strength. And when that is crushed, what's the point? So that's the feeling that he will have. It might not be the reality. That's how he feels. So he will keep retreating and be quiet and find strength in quietness, not saying anything because
the last time I did,
I was
the last time I
shut down.
And something else that's strange. What fools us, we think we have brain, but it's not one brain. The people who do neuroscience will tell you there is what they call the amygdala and the neocortex. The amygdala is our reflex part of the brain. When someone throws a stone at you, you don't think,
should I get out of the
you're dead. Right? So the body is designed, it will handle that for you. Right? It's the same thing as your heart beating. You don't have no business with your heartbeat. But there's actual work happening to make sure you remain alive. Now, the other part of it is the conscious, where we think about things. Now, the problem, when you tell your wife things, which part of your wife are you talking to? You see? Because they are the things that are instinctual. Now, you may find instinctively a woman may actually become uncomfortable when a man is too vulnerable.
Yeah.
And she may not know why she's seeing that guy different.
I
Yeah.
don't even know how to describe.
Yes, but she just feels the guy is a bit less than her. Right? Yes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I learned as a young man, like, trying to figure out women. I was like, be careful following what women say. Because what she may say in one
Maybe
point
misleading. Yeah.
may actually be negative for you on the other note.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it is that element that creates, and I like how you brought it out. It's not straightforward. Vulnerability can be beneficial, it can be abused.
Yeah.
So it's a hard
Yeah.
line to
It's a
navigate.
hard line to navigate. Guys, we have run out of time. There's a lot more I would have wanted to ask you, especially regarding sex. When I was preparing for this show, the question that came to mind is, will you die if you don't have it?
Yes. You will die.
At yes. A resounding yes.
Resounding yes.
My
Hey,
God, you put us in a coffin, but gradually.
there is death happening.
There you have it,
There
I
ladies.
is.
think I have the only contrarian.
What
Which
is your...
is quite interesting.
In a minute.
I live by a simple mantra. A man afraid to die cannot be free. You get?
Yeah.
And what comes to mind that I think about, what happens if your wife fell sick?
That's a different
Oh, yeah.
circumstance.
You see? But if you, don't
All factors remaining.
if you don't have that capacity, if you can't stand on a normal day,
Yeah.
will you pray for grace then to deal with
To
it?
deal with. I think that...
The interesting thing about the human body
Yeah.
is that, and particularly the way men are fashioned,
Yeah.
when push comes to shove, when circumstances change,
Yeah.
Adapt.
immediately. That is why it is a dangerous thing for a wife to ask her husband in time of crisis, what are you thinking? Because the very first thing the man does is that he protects this
Yeah. Yeah.
and this.
Yeah.
Because for him, it is how do I get through this war,
Yeah.
not the injuries. For you, it is how is the injuries.
How are you feeling?
He doesn't want to think about that. And that is why, because we are tailored like that, that is why there are more suicides among men
Yeah.
than women. So if your wife is incapable to facilitate that God-given moment, a man condition. That is why after you've given birth, the nigga will go 2 months, 3 months without disturbing you because he knows that the doctor said don't touch before I give you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. And actually when you tempt him, it's like,
In
sister.
fact, scientifically speaking, the testosterone drops.
Yes.
During that
period.
season.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's a natural. So,
Okay.
So don't worry, your man will be called. If you feel sick, he'll be conditioned.
He'll be
But when you do the stuff of that, all you think about.
But is that
But
what you
there's
think
one
about?
thing. There's one thing. Just, I think one of the interesting things about Christians,
Yeah.
the requirement for sex in marriage sometimes can hide lust.
Say more.
Say more.
You see?
Since we have
Yes.
no time.
Because say no more.
Say more.
Say more.
Say more.
Yes, it is. You see, there are things that can become idols.
Yeah.
You see, like money is good, but there's a place it becomes an
An
idol.
idol, for sure.
Sex is good, but it can become an idol.
Yeah.
Your wife can be good, but she can become an idol.
Yeah.
So I think it's that finding that balance, where you
balance.
don't idolize things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the balance needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think you need to call us back on that conversation.
I think
This
so.
one,
Yeah.
this one
I
needs
I
the
think
whole
that
episode.
minute-
Interesting reflex
Yeah.
is that the debate about intimacy, sex,
Yeah.
is not in non-Christian homes.
This
The
is
importance
true. Yeah.
and how, when the frequency is
Yeah.
actually in Christian homes. And
Yeah.
I think for me it is a bit transformed
In your mind.
because we
yeah.
came from a place of sex is evil.
Mhm.
Now all of a sudden it is
It's
available.
very important. Yeah.
And then it
Yeah.
suddenly becomes an idol.
Then it
Yes.
comes the night. So I think for me it is a conversation that I would like to have because
In
I
detail.
think the Christian homes, Christian marriages are failing because of that three-letter word.
Yeah.
Non-Christian homes are thriving,
thriving.
because of that three-letter word.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I get, if the God who put it in place,
There must be a reason.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I understand there will be frequencies
Yeah.
and etc. That's okay, that can be debate. But I think it is imperative that we have that conversation.
Absolutely.
So call us back.
And that conversation will be called Men and Sex. So look out for it. And I hope my husband can be.
Are you sure you want to do that?
I'm pretty sure I want to.
All right.
I want to be on that channel. Thank you guys
Thank you,
for
Rissa.
being here. I have a little something for each one of you to say thank you for coming from Rissa Naturals. Rissa Naturals are the makers of natural skincare products from soaps.
I told you.
I told you.
We'll talk about this after. From soaps to butters and oils, and they actually are making stuff for men as well. So I have a little something for each one of you. This is for Felix.
Thank you.
This is Reverend Captain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please use them and don't give them to your wives.
What if they
I'm
take
watching.
them away?
Eh?
Yeah. Don't need this.
Just find the way it is.
Oh wow, thank you so
They
much.
smell amazing. You can find Rissa Naturals, so Rissa Naturals on Instagram. Follow them for all your skincare products needs. So that's a little
I'll
something
use it.
for you.
Thank you so
will.
much, Rachel.
I can
Thank
see
you
the
guys
type
for being
is really
here.
masculine.
It is, yeah.
And hints of musk.
It is. It is. Yeah. So there you have it. I feel like this conversation was short, but we'll have the guys back again to have a whole, we'll talk about other things, but more importantly, sex. And I'm hoping Ben can be here for that particular conversation. Thank you for watching. Give this episode a thumbs up, comment, share, like, and until next week, make sure you keep it the good wife. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Rachel.